Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're doing well and staying informed. Today, we've got a big update that's got a lot of retirees, seniors, and even some folks still working buzzing with questions. And honestly, I don't blame them. If someone told me $2,400 a month was about to land in certain bank accounts, I'd want to know every detail too. Now, before you grab your phone and start checking your direct deposit, let's break this down carefully. There's been a lot of chatter, some of it accurate, some of it exaggerated, about a major Social Security boost and specifically about monthly checks of $2,400 for certain recipients starting this week. We're going to talk about where this is coming from, who it might actually affect, what's real and what's political spin, and what's next in the pipeline. So, what's the deal? This talk of a $2,400 monthly payment is tied to proposals in Congress, combined with the automatic annual cost of living adjustment, or COLA, and a push from some lawmakers to significantly expand benefits. It's also riding on the fact that inflation over the past couple of years has hit fixed-income households especially hard. Groceries, rent, utilities, they're all more expensive than they were just a few years ago. For millions of older Americans, their Social Security check just isn't stretching far enough. Now, if you've been following the Hill's debates, you know there are a few big names in this conversation. Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont and Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts have both been vocal about expanding Social Security benefits, not trimming them back. Sanders has pushed the Social Security Expansion Act, which would, among other things, raise benefits by $200 a month for all recipients. That's about $2,400 a year. If you do the math, that's where some of the headlines are coming from. But here's where it gets tricky, that's not the same as $2,400 a month. So why are some reports throwing out that bigger number? Partly, it's because of proposals that layer extra benefits for certain groups, for example, people over a certain age, or those with lower lifetime earnings. Add in a COLA boost and you could get close to that $2,400 figure in total benefits for some folks. But again, that's not everyone. This is where people can get tripped up by the headlines. Let's back up and talk about COLA for a second. The cost of living adjustment is tied to inflation, specifically, the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, or CPI-W. Every fall, the Social Security Administration announces the percentage increase for the next year. In 2023, we saw one of the highest COLAs in decades, 8.7%. This year's number was smaller, but still significant given the long-term averages. And if inflation stays sticky, next year's COLA could be higher than the original forecasts. So, is this $2,400 figure guaranteed? No. Is there movement in Congress to get more money to seniors? Yes, but with a huge caveat, it's still subject to negotiations, political gridlock, and budget math. Lawmakers like Sanders and Warren want to fund expansions by lifting the payroll tax cap. Right now, wages over $168,600 aren't taxed for Social Security. On the other side of the aisle, many Republicans say they want to preserve Social Security but focus on solvency first, not across-the-board increases. Some have suggested adjusting the retirement age for younger workers, or modifying the benefit formula to slow growth for higher earners. Here's a quick example of the split. In a recent committee hearing, Sanders argued, no senior in America should be living in poverty, period. And with the resources we have, we can make sure they don't. Meanwhile, Senator Mike Lee of Utah countered, we need to ensure Social Security is there for future generations. Promising more than we can pay for is not a responsible solution. That's the core tension. Do you expand now and find a way to pay for it later, or do you secure the program first before making it more generous? Experts outside of Congress are weighing in too. Alicia Munnell, director of the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College, told CNBC that Social Security remains the primary source of income for most retirees. Even modest increases can make a meaningful difference, but any change must address long-term funding challenges. Translation: boosts sound great, but they're not free. Let's also touch on how payment timing works, because I know a lot of you want to know when, if at all, you might see a change in your check. Social Security payments are staggered throughout the month based on your birth date. If you were born on the 1st through the 10th, you get paid in the 2nd week, 11th through 20th, 3rd week, 21st through 31st, 4th week. Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, typically hits accounts on the 1st of the month. Any new benefit increase that passes, whether from legislation or an annual COLA, would follow that same schedule. Now, here's where the "this week" part of the headline gets tricky. If you're hearing that $2,400 checks are going out right now, that's likely a reference to people whose regular benefits plus supplemental amounts, from either state programs or special adjustments, total around that figure, and who happen to be in this week's payment group. That's not the same as a brand new nationwide policy suddenly dropping $2,400 into every retiree's account. Let's look at the big picture for a moment. Social Security's trust funds are projected to be depleted in the early to mid-2030s. At that point, unless Congress acts, incoming payroll taxes would only be enough to cover about 75% of scheduled benefits. That's the solvency cliff everyone keeps talking about. Both parties agree that letting benefits drop 25% across the board would be political suicide, and a disaster for millions of households. But they disagree sharply on the fix. On one side, lift the payroll tax cap, possibly increase rates, maybe tax some investment income for Social Security funding. On the other, adjust the benefit formula, slow COLA growth for higher earners, encourage private savings. Somewhere in the middle, there are hybrid plans, a mix of new revenue and gradual benefit changes. But in an election year, compromise is rare. And yes, this is an election year factor too. Talking about bigger checks for seniors is politically popular. That's why you'll hear more about proposals like the Social Security Expansion Act, the Social Security 2100 Act from Representative John Larson of Connecticut, and other bills that promise immediate boosts. The question is whether those bills can survive committee markups, floor votes, and the Senate's 60-vote threshold. Here's a quote from Representative Larson in a recent radio interview: "We can afford to do this. We simply have to make the wealthiest Americans pay the same rate into Social Security as everyone else. That's fairness, and that's how we keep the promise." That's a clear pitch, and it resonates with a lot of voters. But opponents warn that raising payroll taxes too high could hit small businesses and self-employed workers at a bad time. So, what should you watch for next? A few key things. The next Social Security Trustees Report, which will update the projected insolvency date. That's expected in the coming months. Inflation data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because that directly affects next year's COLA. Any movement in committee on expansion bills, especially in the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. If you hear lawmakers suddenly talking a lot more about seniors in their districts over the next few weeks, that's your clue that Social Security is being used as a campaign talking point again. Bottom line, are $2,400 monthly checks going to hit everyone this week? No. Are some people seeing that amount in their accounts because of existing benefits, supplements, or timing? Yes. Could we see broader increases in the next year or two if expansion bills pass? Possibly, but it's far from guaranteed, and it's wrapped up in the bigger fight over the program's long-term health. Let's dig deeper, because while the $2,400 figure has grabbed attention, there's a whole set of side stories that barely make it into the headlines. And honestly, these angles might be even more important for understanding where Social Security is headed. First, there's the question of state-level supplements. A lot of people don't realize that certain states, like California, New Jersey, and New York, have their own programs that can bump up monthly income for low-income seniors or people with disabilities. For example, California's state supplementary payment adds on top of federal SSI, and when you combine that with Social Security benefits, you can get into the $2,000 to $2,400 range in some cases. But eligibility rules are tight, and not everyone qualifies. This is one reason some residents in those states are seeing numbers close to what the headlines promise, while others aren't. Then there's the broader inflation pressure. Even though inflation has cooled compared to the 2022 peak, core costs like housing and medical care haven't really come down. Medicare Part B premiums went up this year, and for many seniors, that increase quietly shaved money off their Social Security deposit. In fact, the Kaiser Family Foundation estimates that nearly 40% of retirees saw most or all of their COLA eaten up by higher Medicare premiums. So while a headline might talk about boosts, the reality in the bank account can feel very different. We also have to talk about the politics of timing. Several policy watchers are saying the sudden renewed push for Social Security expansion this year is not a coincidence. Dr. William Arnone, CEO of the National Academy of Social Insurance, told NPR recently, Social Security reform is politically potent, especially in a presidential election year. The question is, will it be used as a campaign promise or a genuine legislative priority? That's the skepticism a lot of experts have. Big promises can help in polls, but actually moving a bill through both chambers before November? That's a high bar. Now, fresh angle here, there's a quiet but growing debate over how we measure inflation for Social Security adjustments. Right now, COLA is based on the CPI-W, which reflects the spending habits of working-age households. But seniors spend differently, more on healthcare, less on transportation for work, for example. That's why some lawmakers, including Representative John Garamendi of California, have been pushing for the CPI-E, an index specifically designed to track elderly consumer costs. If CPI-E had been used in the last decade, benefits would be slightly higher today. Opponents argue that switching indexes would cost more and accelerate the trust fund's depletion date. Another underreported piece, rural versus urban impact. Seniors in rural areas might see less benefit from a $200 increase if local costs are lower, but they can also face higher transportation and healthcare costs due to distance. Meanwhile, in high-cost urban centers, the same $200 feels like it disappears the second rent or groceries are paid. That's why some advocates are calling for regionally adjusted Social Security boosts, a controversial idea that would pay more to people in expensive areas. Critics say that would turn a universal program into something that looks more like welfare, undermining its broad political support. We should also look at generational politics. Younger workers are paying into the system now, but, according to polling by Pew Research, 45% of adults under 40 believe Social Security won't be there for them in the same form. That makes them less likely to support expansions. They want solvency fixed first. In an exchange on CNBC last week, a younger caller told former Social Security Commissioner Michael Ostrow, "Why should I pay more for benefits I might never see?" Ostrow's answer was pointed, because if you don't, you'll definitely never see them. Here's a twist: private retirement savings. The more talk there is about expanding Social Security, the more some financial planners worry it might create complacency among workers who think the government will handle their retirement needs. Certified financial planner Margarita Ching told MarketWatch, "I love that we're having this conversation about protecting seniors, but Social Security should be part of a retirement plan, not the whole plan. If you delay personal savings thinking Congress will solve everything, you're taking a big risk." Now let's peek at international comparisons. Countries like Canada have a layered system, a universal benefit plus a means-tested supplement and private retirement accounts. Some economists in the US argue that we should strengthen Social Security at the base level, then encourage or even require supplemental savings accounts for all workers. Others say the simplicity of our current model is part of its political strength, and once you complicate it, you risk fracturing support. One more fresh angle: Social Security and debt markets. Expansions mean more spending and less fully paid for by taxes. The Congressional Budget Office has warned that without offsetting revenue, large benefit boosts would add to deficits. In the bond market, that could push up yields, making federal borrowing more expensive. It's a chain reaction that doesn't make for exciting headlines, but it's one reason budget hawks get nervous when they hear across-the-board increases. What's next on the horizon? We're expecting a new inflation report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that could signal whether next year's COLA will be higher or lower than current estimates. The House Ways and Means Committee is holding a hearing next month on retirement security in America, where Social Security expansions will be a major talking point. And keep your eye on the presidential debates. Moderators love asking candidates how they'll save Social Security, and those answers can reveal whether expansion talk is serious policy or just campaign rhetoric. So, while the $2,400 monthly check story is the headline grabber, the deeper reality is a patchwork of state supplements, inflation math, indexing debates, generational tensions, and fiscal trade-offs. Understanding those layers helps you see why some people get excited, and others roll their eyes, when new benefit numbers hit the news. So, my advice? Stay informed, but don't make big financial plans based on the most optimistic headline you see. Watch the official Social Security Administration announcements, keep an eye on your payment schedule, and follow what's happening in Congress. Because as we've seen, a single committee amendment can make a huge difference in what actually becomes law. That's all for today's update. I'll keep tracking every development on this story, from new legislation to COLA changes to payment schedules, and bring it to you as soon as it's confirmed. Thanks for watching, thanks for caring about staying informed, and I'll see you in the next one.